Nutty Putty Cave, located in Utah, was first explored in 1960, and it quickly became quite famous for its narrow and slippery passageways, twists, turns, and squeezes. The Birth Canal, or the Scout Eater, and the Maze are different cave parts. The Nutty Putty Cave is a hydrothermal cave with a total surveyed length as well as the depth of 1,355 meters and about 145 feet. Utah was a favorite of the locals, with Boy Scout troops and college students attracting 5,000 visitors a year. But then came the tragic death of John Edward Jones in 2009, when the 26-year-old medical student and father became badly trapped upside down inside a narrow fissure and couldn't be rescued. The dangerous Nutty Putty Cave has been closed ever since. Many people who visit the Nutty Putty today will only find a plaque dedicated to Jones and poured concrete ceiling over the entrance. Because Jones's body couldn't be removed, the cave is now basically considered a grave. And after more than a decade after the unfortunate accident, what it was like to explore Nutty Putty Cave, the history and geology of the cave, and how the 2009 incident impacted the local caving community? On November 24, 2009, two brothers, John and Josh, decided to revisit their love for caving and chose Nutty Putty Cave as their next adventure. It was around 8 p.m. on a Wednesday, and it was just a few days before Thanksgiving when the brothers arrived at the cave site. The two weren't alone, as there were 9 more friends who had joined them, so by caving standards, it was a big group that finally entered the Nutty Putty Cave. Everything went smoothly for an hour or so. Soon, John, Josh, and 2 friends decided to take up a challenge they had heard about, namely passing through the Birth Canal. This narrow and challenging passageway eventually opens up to a larger room. The adventure party had explored the largest room in the cave, aptly named the Big Slide. John went in first. He wriggled forward for some time, but did not see any larger area. He continued to inch forward. However, the narrow passage did not come to an end. The squeeze made a sharp downward turn. John pressed forward confidently. Maybe he noticed that the tunnel got wider at the bottom, but it was already too late. Then it all went wrong 50 feet earlier. It is still not clear whether John entered the Birth Canal and just accidentally turned and went into the Scout Eater, or if John had missed the Birth Canal completely and crawled into another passageway right next to the Birth Canal known as Ed's Push. Now, Ed's Push did not lead to a larger room, as it does not lead anywhere, at least not for a 6-foot, 200-pound man can fit. Also, Ed's Push has 4 uncharted passageways at its end. However, they are all too small for a human. But still, John kept pushing through until he couldn't continue. To top things off, he had made his way into a fissure which went nearly straight down, which made John unable to turn back on his own. The narrow aperture he was trapped in measured 10 by 18 inches, and this size is comparable to the opening of a front-loading washing machine, except it wasn't a great circle, and John was stuck in the tightest part of the opening. He was now trapped more than 100 feet below the ground, and deep inside the cave, all he could do now was just wait and pray. Josh, following him, was the first to find John. Anxious about how much the rock had swallowed John, Josh tried to pull his brother out, but he only managed to inch him up. Then, as soon as he let John go, he slid right back into the crevice. John was stuck with one hand pinned under him and the other forced backward. John's ankles and feet were free, however, were of little use as gravity pushed them down. They both then said a quick prayer, and Josh hurried back to the ground, and he slowly wiggled out of the narrow passage and rushed to the surface. Once he was outside, he instantly called for help while their friend stayed with John. The first person to arrive to help was Susan, who was a local rescue volunteer who dropped everything she was doing and quickly rushed to the scene. She arrived around midnight. It was now more than 3 hours since John had been trapped deep inside the cave. As she was small, agile, and quick, Susan took no time to reach John. Then, in the next few hours, many rescuers arrived. The rescue team quickly brainstormed different plans. They had discussed everything. They even planned to lube the walls of the cave, until they all came to a conclusion and decided to use a rescue rope which passed through a few climbing cams, with one end of the rope to be tied around John's legs and the other end to be pulled by the team. At the same time, the team tried drilling away chunks of rock near John. However, the hard material and the weird position made drilling slow and painful work, but they only managed to drill through a couple of inches of rock in over an hour. Moreover, the position of John's body also complicated things. He was stuck nearly upside down, only his feet were visible to the rescuers, and the ceiling above the feet hung so low, the rescuers couldn't just pull him out as his feet would get in the way. Then time passed as the rescuers worked in a hurry and failed with their first system of climbing cams. Then the team tried to use a rope pulley system, anchoring the pulleys with bolts and drilling the bolts deep in the cave walls. With this, everything was made more difficult by how narrow the cave was. Although there was a large team of rescuers, volunteers, emergency services, and a rescue helicopter outside, only one person could directly access John. On the other hand, John was doing worse. He had now been stuck upside down for a long time, having difficulty breathing, and John's heart had to work twice as hard against gravity to push the blood flow out of his brain. John was swinging back and forth between panic and calmness. Everything changed when the rescuers finished installing their pulley system and started pulling John out. They worked in an 8-man group, all tugging as one. At times, John was in great pain, so they made frequent pauses. However, each time they pulled, they managed to pull John up more. After pulling him upwards the third time, finally John was lifted high enough so that he could make eye contact with the rescuer nearest to him. Something happened when the rescue team pulled John upward for the fourth time. The rescue team fell backward as the rope went loose in their hands. Because of this, the closest rescuer felt something hard hit his face and passed out for a while, but when he came to, he saw nothing but dust. And once the dust settled a bit, he realized that the stone arch near John's legs, where the rope was tied around, had broken, and the nearest key bolt had broken. He couldn't determine where exactly John was in the dust, but soon he realized that John had slid right down the aperture again, seemingly even deeper than before. As the rescuer suffered serious facial injuries from the effect with the metal carabiner, and he could not continue his rescue efforts, so he had to switch places. When the replacement reached John, he realized that John's breathing was less frequent, and John was struggling to stay alive. The rescuer called for John, but they received no response. Then he tried to lower himself into the crevice to put the rope around John's waist. However, he got stuck himself. After finally getting himself free, he drilled a new hole for the pulley and crawled out, exhausted, but to be replaced by yet another rescuer who reached John, however, couldn't make contact with him. Soon after, a medical doctor crawled into the cave and reached John. By midnight, 25th November, John was announced dead. He was only 26 years old. There were a total of 137 rescuers who worked hard to save John. However, they had to leave the tragic site with no luck and heavy hearts. A week later, public authorities decided to close Nutty Putty Cave to the public permanently. John's family had a plaque on the cave entrance in his memory. It has been sealed ever since. What are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments section down below. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it interesting, take a deep dive into the like and subscribe buttons. Let us know what you thought of it in the comments. We'll see you again soon in another video, if you dare.